Get a cup, get a cup, get a cup. Hello, hello. Welcome back to another video. I'm Vrishka Slim, and today we are doing the first Punic War Oversimplified Part 1 by Oversimplified. Now, I've had a lot of requests to react to Oversimplified. I think this is like history-based. I'm not really 100% sure here. This is my first Oversimplified video. So yeah, with that being said, the original link's in the description. Without any further ado, let's begin.
Oh, Marcellus, you sure have a lot of dignitas. Kiss me. Okay.
Hey, Dad. Hi, son. Just reading the newspaper. What can I do for you?
Did he just eat that? What was that, a toy?
Well, you know how you always say Rome is the greatest civilization in the world?
It bloody well is.
Well, I was just wondering, what makes us so great? How did we come to be?
Wow. My son. Boy, let me take you on a journey.
To this side of the room.
The story of Rome begins with these beautiful baby boys going to town on some she-wolf mommy milkers.
That's gross.
You're gross.
I think it's an actual thing. I think I've seen that before somewhere. Some people should not be artists, whether they are talented or not.
Sorry, son. You're not.
Why are these babies, or I don't know if these are little people or whatever, but what? Look at their freaking jack. They got all their... These guys have been doing, like, bench presses and stuff. What the frick?
I love you. They're called Romulus and Remus, and when they grew up in 753 BC, they founded Rome.
But there was just one problem.
They
Is that real?
couldn't agree on which of them should be the king, but they worked it out peacefully, right? Oh, heavens no. Romulus caved Remus's skull in with a shovel. Here's a picture. Our first king committed fratricide? I know. Look at his face. When's the part where we become the greatest civilization, Dad? Well, you see, at first Rome was full of men. Oh, yeah. I'm talking like a real sausage party. You know what I mean? Yes, sir. So we invited some neighboring cities over for a big feast. And then we literally kidnapped all of their women. Here's a picture. Look at that one. She's like...
Is this actual? Like, what happened? I did not know this. I do not know history that well, especially of, like, that old of history. I do not know it that well. So this is crazy. This is real. You held a feast, all you had was sausage party, and then you wanted women, so then you invited other people over, and then you kidnapped their women. Like, how big was Rome? If this is the start of it, is it only like 2 people, and they're just, you know, saying this is a country?
This is messed up. You're messed up! Ugh. Sorry. I'll be a better father. I promise. So then, finally, after centuries of monarchy, those tyrannical kings started getting a little too big for their britches. So we
Centuries? Isn't century like 100 years? Like, so the 2 kings, they should be dead.
overthrew the kings and established Rome as a republic. Is that when all the killing stopped? Oh, heavens no. That's when the killing surged, baby. We went wild and conquered the Latin League, the Samnites, the Etruscans. Woo! What a rush. Dad, Rome seems pretty barbaric. You're barbaric! Oh, I forgot to tell you about the time a prophet told Saturn his son would one day overthrow him. So Saturn literally ate his own son seconds after he was born. I don't want to
That's freaking evil. The frig?
see a picture. Here's a picture.
Dad, look at that!
I've seen that before. I didn't know it was based on anything. I just thought it was just someone on like meth or something.
That's messed up, man. Are we really this uncivilized? Hey! If we were so uncivilized, would we use communal toilets where we all fart and poo together in one big stinky, steamy, dirty toilet room? Yeah, Dad. We would! Clean your butt with a sponge, Timulus! But all these guys just used it! What's wrong with your son, bro? I don't want to be Roman. This is so weird. You're weird! Sorry, you're not...
That is like a very disgusting part of Rome. Like, because this is real. I know this is real. I could not do that. Like, I mean, if you're born in it and you're raised in it, you'd think it's normal. But it's like, that's just... Oh, why couldn't they have invented paper earlier?
Weird. I'm sure you're probably fine.
This is funny so far. I like it. I like the animation style, I like the humor in it. Cut the ad out. Cut the ad out. Ad.
Want to talk to you about your car's extended warranty?
The Roman Republic, a nation that, since its foundation, had been stabbing necks all the way down the Italian peninsula. But this isn't the famous Roman Empire that ruled the known world. Not yet anyway. This is a relatively juvenile Rome, still just a regional power. In 264 BC, the big daddy of the Western Mediterranean was Carthage. let's rewind a bit. Carthage was founded in 814 BC, when some Phoenicians in Tyre had a mega surplus of goods and decided to export those goods across the Mediterranean. They became the dominant trading power in the region, and to support their growing trade network,
I have vaguely heard of that before. Like, this is like a big trading area. I don't know why, but I have heard of that.
the Phoenicians established a number of colonies, one of which was Carthage. Therefore, Carthage began its life as a Phoenician trade colony, and the Carthaginians were actually Phoenicians. Or, if you're a Latin-speaking Roman, they were Punic, hence the name of the video. Over the centuries, Carthage gradually expanded and became the region's base of power. Just like Rome, Carthage was a semi-democratic republic with its own senate and judiciary. But there were also some pretty hefty differences between the two. While Rome was big into farming and stabbing people in the neck, the Carthaginians, on the other hand, just like their Phoenician forefathers, had built their power through trade and navigating the waves. They went here and there, selling ivory tusks, gold, and slaves. And as a result, they were rolling in it. Whenever they weren't busy swimming around in their copious hoards of money, in their spare time, they also possibly enjoyed sacrificing their children to Baal, the god of... Let me just check my notes.
Is that mischief?
Ah, yes. Plant fertility. Oh boy, these figs
Didn't know that.
aren't looking too hot. Maybe if I throw my son into a burning pit of fire, they'll grow. Have you tried watering them, Dad?
Nah, I think I'll just throw the sun in and see what happens.
No, we'll try that second. As a result of all their trading, Carthage had emerged as one of the Mediterranean superpowers. But wait, they said. Rome? What the heck is that? Well, I know it's a pretty obscure little country that you've probably never heard of. But this spunky young nation was about to upset the entire region's balance of power. Initially,
Now, did Rome attack them first, or did they go after Rome? I wouldn't be surprised if it was Rome going after, because they seem to be a little bit bloodthirsty.
the two sides enjoyed relatively friendly relations, and had even signed a couple treaties. But it was a relationship that was practically destined to turn sour. See, Rome had a thing where they liked to aggressively expand their boundaries, often viewing such expansion as a defensive act. Kinda like when you kill your neighbor, because you knew eventually they would have tried to kill you first.
That's insane. I mean, there are people like that. There are people like that where they just want to keep expanding. I can think of a few people nowadays that want to keep expanding.
Meanwhile, Carthage was extremely protective of its wealthy trade network. So if you put a very strategically important island between them, well, 2 + 2 equals war. Tensions rose, and the two sides began viewing each other with increasing disdain. The hard-working Romans looked across the water at the money-hungry Carthaginians and said, "Look at those dishonest crooks. Bet they've never done an honest day's work in their lives." And the Carthaginians looked back and said, "Look at those simple-minded brutes. Bet they've never sacrificed a baby in their lives." While war between the two superpowers seemed inevitable, the event that finally triggered it was a little unexpected. The whole thing began with a few simple mad lads on a wild night out. These mad lads are called the Mamertines. They were Italian mercenaries employed by the tyrant of Syracuse here. But when he died, his successor said, "Sorry fellas, we don't need any big burly men with sharp sticks anymore. You can all go home." The Mamertines, as it turned out, didn't want to go home.
So these guys were from a totally different country. Like, they're just mercenaries. So they had no allegiance to either side, and they're the ones who started it.
Instead, they went to the nearby town of Messana and said, "Hey man, we are but poor little buff boys without a home. May we come in?" Aw, poor fellas.
Poor little buff boys.
Sure thing. Just so long as you promise not to massacre all of us. We promise. The Mamertines then massacred all of them. Well, not all of them, just the men. And they stole their homes and families. Ha! This is
Just like the Romans.
my house now. This is my best dad ever mug now. And you guys are my new family.
Come here, son. I love you. You know that. I love you. Come here.
Son? Wanna go play catch with your old papa? You're not my real dad! Ugh. Teenagers. Am I right, dear? You're not my real husband! Ugh.
Wives. Am I right, son?
I'm so trapped in this marriage. Then get out! No. Messana was now controlled by the Mamertines, and they began raiding up and down the Syracuse coastline. When the new ruler of Syracuse saw this, he wasn't happy. The Syracusans began fighting back, and in response, the Mamertines said, "Oh crap, they're fighting back? What do we do? Quick, we'll convince the Carthaginians to come and save us." Oh no! We're in trouble, and we need a big, strong empire to come and rub our bellies.
I actually really like this. I love the humor that's in this. This is actually great. I should have reacted to this sooner.
Why are you saying it like that? If I was a big, strong empire, I think I'd like to be seduced. See? It's working! The Carthaginians had long dreamed of
Get
controlling
on
all
here,
Sicily.
boys.
They had been fighting Syracuse and their Greek influence on the island for centuries. And now, here was a great opportunity to get one over on them. So Carthage promptly answered the Mamertines' cry for help and sent a force to garrison Messana.
Oh, let me guess. So the force goes there, and they end up somehow starting to fight with the Romans because they think they're the enemy or something.
As it turned out, however, some within the ranks of the Mamertines weren't too happy with the occupying Carthaginians, and they sent out a second cry for help to Rome. When it reached the Roman Senate, they were a little more hesitant. Going to help the Mamertines ran the risk of triggering an all-out war with Carthage, and they had only just finished conquering the Italian peninsula, so they were kind of tired.
Yeah, it seems like a bad idea. Like, why does Rome doesn't have any allegiance to the Mamertines or whatever they're called, right? So why all of a sudden go try to help them? Especially when you risk such a war with such a bigger, empire.
Plus, the Mamertines were all the way across the water. They had never made a leap like that before. So you would assume that to avoid any conflict with Carthage, the exhausted Romans would probably sit this one out. But you would assume wrong. Rome just couldn't resist a good chance for war. Why? Well, there's something you gotta understand about Rome. See, as a republic, they were hell-bent on preventing any one man from ever gaining too much power. And so rather than having one leader, Rome had two, called consuls, who shared power. These consuls could also only serve for 1 year at a time before new consuls were elected. These measures...
That's an actual good idea. Like, that's smart. But I assume, the issue with that happened with them is the same what happens with most countries, that you may have this, but it gets corrupted. And then, say if they have a senate or whatever, it's probably also corrupted, and people are bribed and whatever. That happens, it just keeps on happening.
to limit the powers of the consuls were noble, but had an interesting side effect. The consuls knew they had just 1 year to try and gain as much glory and prestige as possible, something that was very important in Roman society. And the best way of gaining glory and prestige? Military victory, of course. The Roman political system basically ended up encouraging these consuls to go out and be as aggressive as your Italian grandmother when you don't eat all the spaghetti. And so the glory-seeking consuls convinced the people to vote in favor of going to Messana. And in they went. Upon the arrival
And that's how it started, I guess.
of the Romans, the Carthaginians in the city, amongst the confusion, were forced to leave. Now, in contrast to Roman aggression, the Carthaginian military had a slightly different philosophy. All right, kids, listen up. If you want to grow up to be Carthaginian military leaders, there's a few things you have to understand. If you fail to succeed on the battlefield, that's a crucifixion. Showing cowardice, that's a crucifixion. Hello, sir.
So it's basically you got to fight till death, otherwise, we're just gonna take you out regardless.
What are you doing here? Aren't you meant to be in Messana? Yeah, but the Romans showed up. So you just left? Sure did. Oh, you better believe that's a crucifixion. The Roman consuls were awarded for victory, and therefore tended to be aggressive go-getters. By contrast, the Carthaginian generals were brutally punished for failure, and so they tended to be more cautious.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the way of crucifixion back then was not this. The cross was only a way of crucifixion for a short amount of time, and they used to do it other ways, like before that. It was only for like a very short amount of time that they were actually crucified on crosses.
And restrained. This dynamic is helpful for understanding some of the crazy things that happened during the Punic Wars. So, the Romans have crossed over to Messana, and now there was some red on the island. Hit that panic button. This turn of events was unacceptable to both Carthage and Syracuse, so the traditional enemies teamed up to kick the Romans off their island. They surrounded the city and said, "Hey, you jerks! This isn't your island! come out of there at once. Okay, we're coming. See, Phil, you just gotta speak with authority. That's what being an alpha male's all about. Oh, you...
Thanks, Andros Taterus. I always thought being an alpha male was about trying to rock a receding hairline.
You brought your weapons and armor? No, I didn't mean... Oh, crap. Out the Roman legions came to engage the Carthaginians in battle, and they sent them packing. With the Battle of Messana, whether intended or not, by going to help the Mamertines, the two sides had just slipped into an all-out war. With the initial Roman victory, towns across Sicily, including Syracuse, began switching allegiance, because being a winner is more fun. But the Carthaginians...
Fair enough, though, right? If you know they're coming in and they're going crazy, maybe switch over so that your town's spared. I 100% get that, especially if you're just like a town person and you're like, I just want to grow crops, you know, do it with sheep. You know, I just want to have a family. I don't want to grow crops and mind my own business. I don't care who I pay taxes to. I 100% get that, because like the average person's not really a fighter.
The Carthaginians weren't about to just give up that easily. In 262 BC, they began building up their forces at Agrigentum. So the Romans, being aggressive go-getters, aggressively go-got them. The Romans immediately laid siege, hoping to starve out the Carthaginian garrison. However, because this was the first time Rome had been fighting outside the Italian peninsula, across the water, they struggled to supply their forces, and before long, the Romans were as starving as the Carthaginians they were besieging. They had to forage for food, leaving them open to ambush. And when Carthaginian reinforcements arrived, creating a double siege, things got really bad. Everybody starved each other for months until nobody could take it anymore, and they all finally came out for battle, which Rome won. Here's the report from the recent siege at Agrigentum, sir.
We killed 30,000 while only suffering 7,000 losses? That's amazing! We're the best! Yes, sir. Whoops, those are the wrong way around. What? We lost 30,000? We're the worst! But we won, right? Yes, sir. But we also...
So we're the best! That's a lot of friggin' people to sacrifice, you know, basically over nothing.
got our asses kicked. Yes, sir. So are we the best or the worst? Yes, sir.
A little bit of both, I think.
The Romans won at Agrigentum because they were aggressive go-getters, and they now began eyeing up the possibility of conquering the entire island. But they also suffered very heavy losses, and it was clear they couldn't sustain a campaign if they couldn't supply their troops.
Exactly. Maybe you need to move some more troops over there, and you need to just kind of sit and build up supplies and whatnot before you make any other moves.
Here's the issue. Sicily was an island. Islands are surrounded by water. A strong navy would be vital for supplying troops and winning the war. Here was Carthage's navy, and here was Rome's. I think you can see the problem. Historians debate just how much naval experience Rome had at this point. Presumably, they must have had something to defend their shoreline. But whatever it was, it would have paled in comparison to the Carthaginian juggernaut.
Yeah, because their whole, you know, thing was based on trading and moving goods around, right? Via the water. So that makes sense. It makes sense. And, you know, Rome always only seemed to expand on land, not via water. So it makes sense that that would be a weak point.
And so Rome had to figure out exactly what to do about all this water.
Come on, men. We're not gonna let some pansy candy-ass water get in the way of our glorious victory against Carthage.
Let's start drinking.
Tell my kids I love them. We're gonna need a bigger boat. What's a boat? I don't know. If the Romans wanted to win this war and obtain Sicily, there was only one thing for them to do. I guess we're just gonna have to go ahead and build ourselves a war fleet, aren't we? From scratch? From scratch. But we don't even know how.
Never mind how to fight with one. Don't worry, Hank.
We're up to the challenge. Come on, guys. We're Romans, and Romans aren't afraid of anything.
And so, the Romans worked long and hard trying to figure out how on earth you actually build the latest style of warship.
I mean, in that situation, wouldn't it be good to just, or wouldn't it be an idea Would it be a good idea to just go and like capture one of their boats, the enemy's boats, and just bring it back and then like dissect it and just kind of duplicate it?
In the end, they had a bit of luck on their side. A Carthaginian quinquereme ended up accidentally grounding on Italian soil.
Perfect.
The Romans found it and copied the design.
That's literally what I just said, but, you know, they just got lucky and didn't have to go and take it.
While the new fleet was being built, the Romans trained rowers on land. And would you believe it? The Romans put together a full fighting fleet of 120 warships in just 2 months. A
What? That's insane. I mean, how well built were these? Like, that's mass production. That's crazy.
staggering feat. Now, I know what you're thinking, but oversimplified. If the Romans can build a war fleet from scratch in 2 months, then why does it take you half a year to make a video?
If these are, because they're animated, like, it's very impressive how these are done. I 100% understand.
Well, my valued subscriber, I think you should shut up. What the heck? How on earth did the Romans learn how to build a war fleet? This shouldn't be happening. From what I hear, they copied the design from us, sir. Well, how on earth did they get the blueprint, Carl? I don't know, sir.
Yeah,
but
Carl.
I'll tell you what, if you're worried about people stealing your data, no.
Is this an ad?
And you want to protect yourself from outside threats, don't you dare. Then you, my friend, if you mention NordVPN, I'll scream. Should use NordVPN.
Silly.
The siege at Agrigentum, supply issues, and building a war fleet. So now the Romans have a navy, and it's time to put it to the test. But how does one wage ancient naval warfare? Easy. All of the ships had giant bronze rams on the front, so all you had to do was outmaneuver the enemy and give him the jimmies. Easy.
Really? That's all? They didn't have, like, I mean, I don't think they had cannons. I mean, China might have had, they had gunpowder. Like, they were some of the first to ever come up with gunpowder, and I think I don't know what time that would have been, but I think they might have already had gunpowder at this point, but I don't think the Romans did.
Easy as pie. And so the aggressive Romans set out for some good old-fashioned jimmy giving. The consul, Gnaeus Cornelius Scipio, set out for the town of Lipara, believing the garrison there wanted to join the Romans. As he entered the harbor, however, he found himself trapped by a Carthaginian fleet. And in the following skirmish, he was completely outmatched. The Romans may have had a brand new fleet, but when it came to engaging in actual combat, their inexperience showed.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You can have 1,000 ships, but if the people piloting them do not know what they're doing or don't have the experience and tactics that these other, you know, I forget the name of them, but, you know, that they have, then it makes sense that you're going to lose, right? Because it's not all about what you have, it's about what you know.
There was just something better about the Carthaginian ships. The Carthaginian rowers had nicer abs. The entire Carthaginian Empire had been built on expert seamanship. So, when it came to water,
like, I could have swore Rome had a lot of seamanship too, without the boats.
Carthaginians were better, and the Romans were wetter. In their initial skirmish, the Romans were beaten so badly that the consul, Scipio, was given a nickname, Asina. And if you're wondering what that means, just drop the Ina. So what were the Romans to do? How could they possibly stand up to this Carthaginian superpower? Well, there's something you gotta understand about the Romans.
Wouldn't it be good just learning new tactics and actually training, you know, before you go out and fight? Like, I assume they did some training and whatnot, but if you're going up against people who solely did everything by boat, then focusing on training for the water should have been an extreme priority.
Back when they found that Carthaginian ship and copied its design, that wasn't a one-off thing. Copying their enemies was as Roman as punishing murderers by sewing them into a leather pouch with a monkey, snake, and rooster, and then throwing them into a river, which is a thing they did. Wait, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, copying their enemies. Many of the most famous Roman inventions were actually borrowed. Aqueducts, chariot racing, their gods. Even in warfare, the Romans would get pierced by a Sabine javelin, and they'd be like, wow. They'd get hacked to bits by an Iberian sword, and they'd be like, wow. And they'd copy the designs for themselves. However, they wouldn't just copy it. They would advance it, finding ways to adapt it as perfectly as possible.
That's smart. That's really smart. That's kind of like China in ways, where today, you know, they'll at least this is what I've heard, that if you are going to get stuff manufactured over there, you never want to get it manufactured as a whole. You want to get it manufactured as parts and get those parts shipped over to you wherever you are, and then you would put it together. Because if you get it manufactured over there and they put it together, they have the whole design and they'll take it and basically use it for themselves and do something similar to this, which is smart, but it's like so much for your patents.
And in the case of naval warfare, the Romans realized if they wanted to beat the Carthaginians at their own game, they would have to adapt. The Romans excelled at combat on land, not on water. But what if, they said, we could somehow turn a sea battle into a land battle? Sounds crazy, right? Well, they made a couple of tweaks to their warship, and look, here they come again. They must love getting their asses kicked. Sir, what's that toll thing sticking out of their ships?
Is that a way for them to like mount the other ship? Or to board? That's cool.
They really are idiots. Look at that thing. That'll make them blow over. I mean, look at... Bob! Bob! Get your camera out. Take a picture of it.
That spike's gonna come right down on his head, isn't it?
I mean, how stupid can you be? Let's just add a big wooden tower to our ship that'll weigh us down and blow us over in the wind. I mean, what does that thing even do? The Romans had built a big swinging spiked gangway called the Corvus. So when the Carthaginian ships approached to ram them, the Romans would just slam them. The Carthaginians...
That's freaking brilliant. And can it pivot, or is it only, you know, aimed in one direction? Because that seems like a bad idea. But if it could pivot and you could move it, say, to the left, to the right, a certain amount of degrees, that would be brilliant. You could stop them in any tracks.
Those big
What the freak did I just do?
No problem. The Corvus could swivel. Try going behind. The Romans would
I could swivel. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
huddle to the coastline. It was foolproof. Those big, sexy Carthaginian rowing muscles could flex all they want, but they were no match for the Roman mind. So ladies, you see, what really matters is what's on the inside. Please go out with me. And with that, the
And what's on the inside is Mountain Dew.
Romans, who had only just recently began dabbling in the art of naval combat, thanks to their ingenious Corvus, had just managed to outclass the Mediterranean seafaring superpower. The Carthaginians were stunned, and the general in charge of the defeated Carthaginian fleet, well, you better believe that's a crucifixion. With their newfound...
Doesn't sound like a good method to grow, you know? One little mess up or a fail, and then all of a sudden you're friggin' out. You know, there's not really a chance for you to grow or to learn or to progress. It's just you're friggin' out. You're done. You're donezo. And we gotta find someone else to replace you. Like if the Romans had done the same kind of thing, after the first ships were destroyed, the person who created them would have been killed, and then that would be it, right? But they decided to evolve and adapt and change, and that allowed for the progression that they have now.
control of the seas, the Romans could now more easily blockade coastal cities and supply their legions on land. Surely, the Romans were now free to unleash their aggression all over the island. Haha! Hey, Carthaginians!
Was that sexual?
What are you gonna do now that we're free to rampage across the island? We're gonna go inside these walls and close this gate. Oh, come on, guys. Stop messing around. Come out so we can kill you. No. Oh, come on. No. Oh, no. To counter the new Roman supremacy, the Carthaginians decided to engage in a defensive war of attrition, forcing the Romans to engage in siege after lengthy siege. The war in Sicily.
The Romans were really good at that, though, weren't they? At least from my knowledge, I thought they were really good at doing sieges, because they would just, like, surround whatever they're sieging and then just not allow stuff to go in, and the people inside would basically just starve to death.
Became a long,
as they did early in this, too.
Slug. One by one, cities slowly fell as the Romans gained ground. Occasionally, the Carthaginians countered and even pushed them back, only for the Romans to rebound again. And whenever a city did finally fall, the Romans could delight in slaughtering the entire population and selling any survivors into slavery, which was pretty standard procedure at the time. In general, the campaign on land was progressing much slower than the Romans had hoped, and quite frankly, they were getting sick of it. So in 256 BC, they decided that
How long has this war gone on for so far? I don't remember what year it started in, but it's going backwards, right? Because that's just how it works. But I don't remember what year this started.
something had to change. Hey everyone, my name's Marcus Attilius Regulus,
And this guy's famous. This guy's really famous.
and I'll be one of your consuls for this year. Look, as I'm sure you all know, Sicily's being a bit of a drag. Sure, I could go and spend my entire year as consul besieging one single city, but they'll never make a naked statue of me for that. So here's the new plan. I'm gonna skip Sicily entirely, take my army, and go right for the heart of Carthage itself. I'll slaughter the men, enslave all the women and children, and when I return, you'll all build 1,000 naked statues of me. Marcus, that women and children stuff, that seems pretty evil and barbaric.
That's how Rome started, baby!
No, Jim, it's perfectly normal in the ancient world. Sometimes we even chop their pets in half.
What? True story? Oh, people back then were friggin', I mean, people don't change. I think people would still behave, this kind of way if they were allowed to, Because like, you see online, like I see online a lot, people who don't like other people's politics call for they start going crazy. So I think if they were allowed to behave this way, they would.
Okay, guys, looks like the Romans are coming straight for us this time. And what will they do when they get here? They'll kill us all. They'll massacre each and every last one of us. They may even chop our pets in half. That's barbaric! No, Rob, it's actually pretty normal for the time. We'd do the same to them. Who'll protect us? Funny you should ask, Mary. That's kind of why I called this meeting. Who will protect us? Protect our families, our homes, our children. You guys? Ha! Don't make me laugh.
What's about to happen? Who are they gonna call?
Why, you're just a bunch of stupid and weak farmers. Simple-minded buffoons. Cowards. Fools. Rob here thinks enslaving women and children is barbaric. You're a snowflake, Rob. Yes, you are. The fact is, if the Romans managed to land on African soil,
Is that where they are? I think it is. Because Africa's to the left of Italy and to the left of India. And I think the Romans are in Italy, right? So that's gotta be.
we're all gonna die. A terrifying, hideous, unspeakably painful death.
That's a great war speech. Very motivational.
Is that the end of that speech? Yes. The Carthaginians had to stop the Romans from
So motivational.
ever landing in Africa because they believed that would be the end. So as the Romans were building an invasion fleet, the size of which the world had never seen before, the Carthaginians were preparing an even bigger one to stop them.
Can they build them just as fast?
And in 256 BC, as the Roman invasion fleet made its way south, the stage was set for a humongous battle that saw 680 warships, around 300,000 men.
Wow! That's a lot of people per ship. What is that? Let me get the old calculator out here, boys. Okay, I'll just go with the Romans. We got 140,000 divided by 330. 424 people per ship. That's a lot of... How big were these ships? That's crazy. That's like a mini cruise line.
Fighting to decide the course of the war. To this day, the Battle of Cape Egnomus remains possibly the largest naval battle in human history, all the way back in ancient times. So the next time your granddad tells you about the time he sank a Japanese aircraft carrier, kick him in the nuts. The Romans had a lot...
Yeah, big deal, Grandpa. Do you know what they dealt with thousands of years ago? Go back to watching Jeopardy.
riding on this battle. They weren't just sending their warships, but transports as well, full of supplies and horses for their invasion of Africa. They therefore formed a protective wedge-like formation to punch through the...
Yeah, those... the supplies should probably be very far back. I don't know why you would have them that close to the actual fighting ships. Like, they should be almost like a day behind or something.
Long, thin Carthaginian line. The Carthaginian generals, however, desperate to prevent the Romans from reaching Africa, had a plan of their own. As the Roman fleet approached, the Carthaginian center feigned a retreat, luring the Romans in so their outstretched flanks could envelop them and get around.
Got them. And then they go right to the supplies. See, they should have... The supplies shouldn't be that close. That seems like such a bad idea.
The Roman corvus. A clever plan. But with such a huge battle and so many ships crowded together, the Carthaginians struggled to maneuver as hoped.
Oh, that's true. If they can't... Because they don't have that spike thing, right? And the Romans do. So the Romans could easily... Like, this doesn't matter to the Romans because Romans could just use that spike thing and go fight them. But these guys, they don't have that. They require... I mean, I don't know why they didn't add something like that to their own, but they require maneuverability in order to actually take down a ship.
And in the chaos, 3 separate battles emerged across the huge battle space. With the number of ships limiting their ability to maneuver, the Carthaginians became sitting ducks, and all the Romans had to do was start swinging. The Roman center came out on top, and were then able to turn around and rescue their pinned down flanks. The Battle of Cape Egnomus was a Roman victory.
Whew. This is actually pretty awesome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for the recommendation. I really should have, reacted to Oversimplified sooner. I love the humor. I love the animation. This is great. Anyway, I hope you guys like this. Make sure you go subscribe to Oversimplified. If you're new, subscribe. And yeah, I think I'd rate this out of a 10. My first one reacting, so I'd have to rate it at maybe a 7 as a baseline. But yeah, I really did enjoy it. And with that being said, I'll see you guys next time.